All right, guys, so we got to talk about the Biden administration taking a victory lap as they have scored a rare W, a small W, but a W nonetheless, as a CIA drone strike killed the leader of Al-Qaeda this weekend. And the name of the terrorist that was killed is Mr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, whom was the leader of Al-Qaeda. Okay, he took over after Osama bin Laden was killed under the Obama administration, and allegedly this guy was involved in plotting the 9/11 attacks, and we've been searching for him for about 21 years or so. Okay, so we finally got him, and this is what Biden had to say about this drone strike. Take a look.
Americans, on Saturday, at my direction, the United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan that killed the emir of Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri. You know, Zawahiri was bin Laden's leader. He was with him the whole time. He was his number 2 man, his deputy at the time the terrorists attacked 9/11. He was deeply involved in the planning of 9/11. One of the most responsible for the attacks that murdered 2,977 people on American soil. For decades, he was the mastermind behind attacks against Americans, including the bombing of the USS Cole in 2000, which killed 17 American sailors and wounded dozens more. He played a key role in the bombing of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, killing 224 and wounding over 4,500 others.
Yeah, so again, the Biden administration here is using this as an example to the American people that, hey, you know, our withdrawal from Afghanistan was justified, even though we gave up the country to the Taliban, because we still have the ability to issue drone strikes. We still have the ability to track, hunt down, and kill leaders of terrorist organizations that may be plotting attacks against Americans within Afghanistan. However, a lot of people are kind of pushing back against the Biden administration and them trying to take a W on this by saying that, hey, you know, one of the agreements in regards to leaving Afghanistan with the Taliban was that they were not going to allow terrorists to be in their country. They weren't going to harbor terrorists, which is what they were doing before the 9/11 attacks. That is what allowed the 9/11 attacks to happen, which is the fact that the Taliban was allowing Al-Qaeda to be in the country and to plot attacks on American soil from their country. People are concerned. They're saying, look, how is this guy so comfortable to be in Kabul, chilling on a third floor balcony, basically going outside on the balcony every single day, okay, to read a book or something like that? How is this guy so comfortable in Taliban territory, okay, if they are not harboring terrorists, okay? Obviously, they are not holding up their end of the bargain when it comes to the withdrawal. And of course, Peter Doocy pressed the White House on this. However, it wasn't the affirmative action press secretary. The White House actually replaced the affirmative action White House press secretary with the more qualified straight white male, John Kirby, who probably is, again, much more adept at answering these types of questions. And I want you guys to take a look at their exchange.
John, something you just said is not consistent with what we were told last year. You're saying that you've always known there was a small number of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. President Biden said, what interest do we have in Afghanistan at this point with Al-Qaeda gone?
Yeah, I mean, in a major way, Al-Qaeda was not playing no, wait, let me finish. They weren't playing a major role in operations or resourcing or planning in Afghanistan. But Peter, I know specifically because I was at a different podium a year ago, and we talked about the fact that Al-Qaeda had a presence in Afghanistan, but small and not incredibly powerful or potent. And I think, again, without getting into numbers, we would still assess that to be the case.
So we know that the Taliban was harboring the world's most wanted terrorist. You guys gave a whole country to a bunch of people that are on the FBI most wanted list. What did you think was going to happen?
I would take issue with the premise that we gave a whole country to terrorist groups. I mean, again, I'd encourage you to ask.
Harboring the world's #1 terrorist. How is that not giving a country to a terrorist sympathizing group, if not giving them permission to have terrorists just sit on a balcony.
The question, I mean, Peter, the way you asked that, it makes it sound like we owned Afghanistan a year ago. It wasn't our country. It was an independent sovereign state. And the president made a bold decision to end a war that had been going on for 20 years because he believed then, and still believes now, that our national security interests are best met by meeting the threats of today, not the threats of 2001. And I don't want to relitigate the whole war here, but obviously no one anticipated the Ghani government to fall as fast as it did. But we said at the time that as we depart Afghanistan, we're going to keep vigilant. We're going to stay ready, and we're not going to let Afghanistan become a safe haven for terrorists who threaten our homeland. And this past weekend, we proved that case precisely.
But so now that you know that the Taliban is not living up to the part of the deal that they made with the U.S. to not let Afghanistan be a place that terrorists feel like they can be safe, what are you going to do about it?
Well, that gets to Peter's question. I'm not going to telegraph decisions that haven't been made or policy initiatives one way or the other.
I would just say for some spectacular terrorist attack in the U.S. to then say, oh, well, there's terrorists
if we were, Peter,
in Afghanistan. Now we can go get them.
If we were, Peter, then we wouldn't have taken the hit on Saturday, the strike that we took on Mr. Zawahiri, if we were just waiting. This isn't about waiting. It's about watching. And we watch very closely.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah, so my main takeaway from that exchange is that, wow, John Kirby should have been the White House press secretary. He is way more qualified and way better at that job than Karine Jean-Pierre, okay? Because even though I disagree with some of the things he said, I think he handled those questions a lot better. One of the things I disagree with is this idea that, well, Afghanistan was his own sovereign nation, right? Even though, again, they were really just a puppet government that we installed that fell apart as soon as we left. Nah, they weren't their own country, bro, right? They were not their own country, okay? And we, in fact, did give the country over to terrorists, right? We gave them over to the Taliban, who are definitely terrorist sympathizers, okay? We just can't really call them terrorists anymore because we're trying to be, low-key cool with them to a certain extent because they are running Afghanistan. And we need them to try to, at least make an effort to stop Al-Qaeda from operating in that country. However, that is a fool's game, okay? And the Biden administration knows that's a fool's game. That is why they are running operations to take out the terrorists from the skies, right? Which is what that operation was, that drone strike was, okay? So, you would think that this would be a time in which both sides can come together and say, hey, you know what? This is good. We have some criticisms about whether or not this is a good long-term strategy. Can this be sustainable for preventing terrorists from, plotting attacks on U.S. soil from Afghanistan? However, this is a W, okay? We took out the leader of Al-Qaeda. But like always, there's going to be some establishment hack journalist that ruins the moment, okay? And this journalist I'm talking about is Miss Rena Nenam, who went on CNN to discuss her opinions on this strike in relation to 9/11. And basically, she took the time to point out that the real terror threat that we need to worry about in this country is actually our fellow Americans and not the terrorists that are operating abroad in countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan. Take a look.
What remains with me in the days after 9/11 are the stories of the pregnant moms who were carrying babies whose fathers had passed, the children who now have grown up without parents. And now I see the reverse true. We live in a country where parents are losing their children. As much as we focus on this war on terror, on Al-Qaeda, Director of National Intelligence Forces have told us Afghanistan is really not our biggest threat right now. We don't talk enough about how domestic extremists are also harming our country and equally as big of a threat as well. And I think it's important to note, the stories that we now cover of the parents from gun violence, our Black churches and our synagogues. I think that's also warrants equal attention when we're talking about threats against America.
It is a really interesting changing landscape that I think is worth the discussion.
So domestic extremists deserve just as much attention as Al-Qaeda, right? According to her. Now, who do y'all think that she's talking about in regards to domestic extremists, okay? Because it's one thing if she was talking about the criminals, right? She said, look, we need to pay more attention to the criminals, right? Crime is rampant in this country. Gang violence is rampant. We really need to crack down on crime, okay? If she said that, I'll say, you know what? I think you're onto something here. I think you might be right, okay? They are a threat to Americans domestically. But we all know that's not who she's talking about, okay? She went on to talk about gun violence, okay? The attack on black churches and synagogues. Yeah, we know who she's talking about, right? She's talking about these so-called white supremacists. She's talking about the mass shooters, right? The only mass shooters that they actually really care about are those are white male. The other ones they really don't care about. They tend to ignore those, right? And she's talking about the parents that are protesting at school board meetings. That is what she's talking about. That is the talking points that have come from the mainstream liberal media and have come from our government, right? Our government has said that, well, you know, what we really need to worry about is white supremacy. That is the biggest threat to this country. We need to worry about them more than we need to worry about Al-Qaeda. Okay, this is not the first time we have seen the mainstream liberal media or the government compare the threat of white supremacy to foreign terrorist groups. Because, you know, white supremacy is responsible for the deaths of thousands of Americans on one day, like, you know, what happened on 9/11, okay, or the deaths of Marines, thousands of Marines overseas, or, you know, billions of dollars of military equipment. Yeah. White supremacy is responsible for all that, right? The threat against black churches and synagogues in America is just as big and important as the threat that terrorist groups, foreign terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda pose against the United States, right? That's according to CNN's logic, or this woman that went on CNN, okay? Again, it blows my mind. I mean, just come out here and just say what you mean. Just say, hey, you know, the real threat is white folks, right? Just say what you mean, because we know that's what you mean. We know that's what you're trying to say. Again, because you won't talk about the criminals. You ain't gonna talk about the criminals. You want to go after law-abiding citizens, right? You want to compare law-abiding citizens to foreign terrorist groups. That's what you're trying to do. Let's keep it 100 here, okay? Again, it's just really amazing to me how there is a direct effort from the mainstream liberal media and the government, the Biden administration specifically, to paint Americans, law-abiding citizens, as terrorists, right? Put them on the same level as, you know, groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and it really is disgusting. It really is. Again, you would think a moment like this would be a moment where you could put all that nonsense aside and just say, hey, you know, this is good. You know, this is, you know, kind of revenge for what happened on 9/11. You know, it's showing that we're continuing to hunt them down. We're not letting it go. That's all you had to say and keep it moving. But no. You had to throw in a jab about the supposed threat of white supremacy to this country, comparing it to that of foreign terrorist groups. Again, classic CNN. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.